tonight I'm not immediately dropping frames, so this is encouraging. I haven't really sort of told anybody I'm streaming, so it's not really likely I'm going to have any audience. Anyway, just have a mouthful of tea there. Danderstein is here. Yes, we are live. Hello, Danderstein. Only just, I might add. And tonight I am going to do something a bit different, because this is probably going to be my last Twitch stream for the year. And I thought I actually want to build a tool which is something I'm going to find useful for various projects that I'm currently working on. And that is a tool which is to pick a colour from a palette. It's a bit of a tongue twister, I suppose. And what I want to emulate in many ways is, for example, in all of the art packages that we're familiar with, I just want to have a widget in wxWidgets which allows me to sort of define a palette in advance. Don't want grays and gradients. Defines a palette in advance, and then I can select the colours from it. And this is quite a common thing in many computer games. Good, Danderstein is here to berate me. That's always encouraging. So it's quite a common thing to have a palette in a game, because limiting yourself to a palette is often a very creative thing to do. If you limit yourself to 4 colours, for example, like the Game Boy classically had 4 different shades of grey, green, then you got that unique look that things look like they were for the Game Boy. And the same is applied for all sorts of different consoles through the ages. Most famously, of course, the NES, the NES, which I love dearly, only works with palettes. And the cool thing about palettes is you can have a palette defined for an object, and then you can change the palette, and the object can also change its appearance. So the way a palette works is different to just a colour selector. And so that's what I want to create in wxWidgets tonight. And I thought, well, do you know what? I don't have a control in wxWidgets which does this sort of thing, so instead I'm going to create one almost from scratch. I say almost because all I've brought in is a template project which has some very bare bones wxWidgets stuff. So I have the app, which is sort of your entry point to the application, and we look at the app CPP. There's nothing in it. In fact, all it does is load a frame. A frame is a basic window in wxWidgets land, and all it does is create that frame with a set dimension and size. And so if I build this project, excellent, and I run it, I get a window 1280 by 720 with the title template, and it's a frame, so that means it's adjustable. Right? You can scroll it around. And I can click the close button. That is all this project does so far. So we really are starting from nothing at all. And unlike the YouTube channel, I have nothing sort of set up in advance. Good point, Dancy. Are you not making this GUI in my PEGX for the Pixel game engine? No. And the reason for this is actually I've found myself in a situation where I actually need to get some code written for both professional and personal reasons. And so I've decided I'm building a tool at the moment, and I've shown the tool to a few people on the Discord server, and this tool is going to make use of this component. But I'm not going to focus on the tool tonight. Tonight we're going to look at just this one component. And who have we got here? Jolly Duck, hello. I don't know if I recognise the Jolly Duck, but it doesn't tell me you're a first-time speaker. But hello and welcome anyway. I have 13 digits, always good to see you, howdy. Gist99, hello. And tonight I am drinking, let's see if we get the camera, this is Bag in a Cup. This is Assam tea, not ass tea, Assam tea. It's very, very tasty. Jolly Duck, first time tuning in, excellent, well good. Friday nights, what better thing to do? Sir Pause, hello, good. And the reason I'm not sort of diving into it is I know that it usually takes 5 to 10 minutes or so just for a small audience to start building up, and I don't want to have to sort of repeat all of the preamble about what is this and why are we doing it. But the tool that I want to try and emulate is a palette selection tool, and I'll be borrowing some code that I've written for certainly handling file formats and things like that, if we get that far. But tonight, let's just get stuck in and start writing some bits and pieces. I will do, before we get too busy, I will pull up Form Builder, because rather awkwardly I have 2 versions of it, and I always load up the wrong version, and I don't want to do that sort of live. Now, people often say, "Oh, well, why do you code your wxWidgets, Javid?" Because sometimes it's better and sometimes it's easier to. But if I'm doing a complicated GUI application, I'll use a tool such as wxFormBuilder, and there are various other tools which are all equally as, well, probably bad, I think is the right way to put it. But it's good enough. It's good enough to get the job done, and I like it for no other reason that you can actually design something in wxFormBuilder very quickly. So let me bang in a frame here, and we'll bang in a sizer, and we can bang in a button and a thing and something else, and you can put controls and stuff. And what it does, it gives you straight away the code required to build that up. So that's often a lot quicker than delving into the documentation. You can just cut and paste this code. Now, of course, you're not supposed to just cut and paste this code. You're supposed to create this base class and then inherit from it, and we might do that if the control got more complicated. But given that the control I'm planning on making tonight is, well, about 90% entirely artificial, I don't see a need necessarily to worry about pulling in code from external editors. Have a look. Alter, in the space of time between your stream announcement and me joining, you sort of fell asleep. Well, it takes time to get X10 asleep these days. So what other bits am I going to need before we get stuck in? So there's often parts of the code which I just copy verbatim from some other applications that I've created, and I think specifically I want the initialization code for handling drawing events. What's nice about this tool, at least for this, is it's sometimes not obvious how the various sizes and nesting affect the UI. Yeah, you can only assemble with sizes, which is quite nice. So you have to do everything via a sizer. It does kind of work. See, yeah, the little preview thing. This is called the XRC renderer or something. This is no good really. It's great for buttons and the very basic stuff. So if I tell this to stretch. And let's pick this control, this one here, and tell that one to stretch in both directions, for example. Now it'll do what size it should do, right? So yeah, it's a useful tool, and the code is there for setting that up. So we'll be stealing bits of that code, but I do want to sort of load up a project that I've got with some custom rendering in, and I'm just trying to think, where have I got a project with a custom renderer that isn't using sort of OpenGL or something. And I'm just trying to think, because I'll need the code for overriding the paint events. And rather than get stuck in to all of the user manuals, it's easier if I can just pull it from another project. So let me just have a think about where that can be. I can steal that code from... did I do it for the videos, actually, the wxWidgets videos? I can't remember anymore. Let's have a look. wxWidgets video. Oh, it looks like I might have done. Let's have a look. Yeah, okay, I did. So when we get that far... we're going to steal some of that code. Alright, that's useful to know. So I think the first thing we need to define is actually what is the palette going to be. And I'm going to stay within wxWidgets land for all of this, because actually pulling over these things into Pixel Game Engine or your own tool is very simple to do. The real only change you're going to make is how you represent the colours. So I guess I'll first of all start by creating a panel that represents the palette. But I need to think about this, because if I just create a regular bog standard palette, then when I've created lots of things, is there a button here to add more stuff? Ooh, that could take some time. Let's try and shrink this down a bit. Also realizing that you can't actually see that. If I just shrink this down, what I'm trying to do is, if we add lots of palette things to this palette selector up here in Affinity, there we go. So it adds a scroll bar. Now I kind of want that functionality because I imagine the palette's at least will end up having something like 256 entries in. So, and because the size of your control, whenever you design a control in wxWidgets, you shouldn't really inflict upon the user how things should be sized. So I kind of want that functionality built in. Now, rather than delve into the documentation, I'm going to delve into wxFormBuilder and have a look at what tools are in wxWidgets to help us. So wxFormBuilder contains most of the tools in wxWidgets. It doesn't contain them all, but it contains sort of the ones that are fairly standard jelly bean type tools. And I think the container that I actually want is a scrolled window. So I'll have a look, see if that exists. Scrolled window container. Now, a scrolled window container is basically a panel that will put scroll bars on as and when it's necessary to do so. So we'll do that, but I think we probably end up wanting something a little bit more sophisticated than a scroll window. We might want its cousin, its not too distant cousin. So if I go to wxWidgets docs and I'm going to search for wx scrolled canvas, is that actually what I want? Ooh, the documentation search thing has fallen apart there. Tell you what, let's just do Google scrolled canvas. There we go. It does exist, but I don't want the Python documentation. Getting to the actual things that you need is not the easiest stuff in the world. Right, if I go to wx scrolled window in the primary documentation, and we'll go from there. Let's have a look. wx scrolled window. Why is that? See, why are chat forums coming up and not? There we go. The main class. Right, so scrolled is now a template. This is in the latest version. In fact, what version is this? Not quite the latest version, 3.05. We want to look at. I think I only want to scroll in one direction. That makes sense. I don't like windows that scroll horizontally, so looks like we want a vertically scrolled window. Now, one of the things vertical scroll windows can do is they can act virtually, so they can sort of give me the rendering size of the panel of the window underneath, which is maintained by the scroll bars. So it looks like we're going to have to populate something. It's going to be a bit complicated getting this done. I kind of thought, I'm sure I remembered there was something called a scrolled canvas kicking around, which allowed me to do drawing a little bit more easily than this. Let's go to main page. Let's have a look at the latest version. I wish the search just worked. That would be a bit better, wouldn't it? wx scrolled. So it's only searching for 305, so let me just put a 3.1 in there, which is the latest version. The search doesn't work, it just kind of collapses and crashes. That's no good. 3.1, alright, we'll go to the class list, try it this way. This is why wxWidgets doesn't take off. Right? It would really become a massive thing if they just made all this work a bit better. Right, so you can see there's so much to this library. wxRRRRSS, scroll bar, scrolled, scroll window. Let's have a look at this. There we are, wx scrolled canvas, also known as a wx scrolled wx window, derives from wx window and doesn't handle children specially. This is suitable for implementing scrollable controls such as tree or list controls. Okay. The scrolled window, however, is a wx panel, which is sort of the basic things behind the scenes. It's derived from wx panel. Its behavior regard to tab traversal and focus handling. Use this window if the control will have child controls. Well, it doesn't. So, okay, I'm going to make an assumption then that I want scrolled canvas, but I think it looks like we can change that relatively easy later on. Hi, Speedy, and hi, Saucy63. So, with that in mind, let's start creating then a scrolled canvas, or at least something that derives from scrolled canvas. Now, I'm going to keep the documentation sort of open on this page here, so I can see what's going on. and we'll get rid of wx form builder because now we're going to start writing some code. Well, the first thing I'm going to want is a class that represents the widget that I'm making. And I'm just wondering, should the widget be a palette, or should it be a panel that contains a scrolled canvas? These are all decisions that well, I may have to make as we go along. So let's add a class anyway. Add a class, and it's going to be palette picker. That's going to be my thing. And I don't like using the base class stuff that's built into Visual Studio. I always find it just doesn't get it right. So I'm going to leave that blank. Okay. Palette picker. I am, however, going to stick these things in my namespace, which is wxWidgets for this sort of thing. Palette picker, and that's going to inherit from. I'm going to need to include these things. Hash include wx slash. What's it actually scrolled? Where is the scrolled canvas coming from? It is in scrollWin.h. Okay. Public wx scrolled canvas. We can go and have a play with how this control actually works in a minute. Right, so I've got my basic class there. I'm going to add to it a constructor. Now, wxWidget constructors are often quite verbose and complex. I find that because you use sizes, you don't really need to specify most of the parameters, so I don't bother. So we'll have palette picker, but it does matter. It does matter to give it a parent. wxWindow star parent. That's all we need to do for the constructor. And I'll also add in a destructor. Right, good. Let's highlight those. Let's right click on them and go bang, create some stuff for me. There we go. So the palette picker is inherited from this scrolled canvas tool. We'll need to pass that information along, of course. Scrolled canvas. So you're watching sort of genuine live code tonight. And we're going to pass into that the parent, and everything else can be default. Window IDs are less relevant as well in sort of modern wxWidgets. These things are sort of a bit old-fashioned, I suppose. Have a glance at the chat. So that has created the basic control. Now, in order to test any of this, I need to add this control to something that we can see. So I'm going to add it to my main, which is just this wx frame. And currently, the wx frame has nothing in it at all. So I'm going to change this to palette picker test. Sorry if I keep messing up with a typo specifically. It's because my microphone is right above the IOP key, so my knuckles keep hitting it. Palette picker test, and we're going to add this to our main thing. So, ooh dear, you can tell I am tired today. I was up doing my Christmas shopping till quite late. Palette picker.h. Do you know what? Just in case this ever ends up on Linux, and it should run just fine on Linux, I'll make that case sensitive. Do it properly. Yeah, Speedy, doing some proper live code tonight. So this is a bit unplanned, and we're just sort of making it up as we go along. But we'll see what the end result looks like soon. Should be nice and visual at least. Right, to my test environment, I'm going to add one of my OLC WX palette picker controls. Now, this is where everybody starts going, what's going on? We're using raw pointers, everything's terrible. I'm going to call that just unit under test for the time being. wxWidgets handles pointers a bit differently. It actually handles pointers in a smart way, and it uses its own built-in smart pointer type. So don't worry too much about seeing raw pointers used everywhere. wxWidgets is pretty good at keeping itself under control. What tends to go wrong is when people go, "Ooh, it's a raw pointer, I've got to use a smart pointer instead," and that starts to then interfere with how wxWidgets handles things behind the scenes, because it's in control of when things are going in and out of scope for lots of very good reasons. But anyway, there's my unit under test, so let's go and create one of those and add it to the main frame. Now, before we do that, though, I do need to create a sizer. So I'm going to create a box sizer. And the box sizer is used for sort of throwing this on the screen. So we're going to be able to test this by dragging the window around and seeing how it reacts. So I'm going to create U, and I think, if I remember correctly, I want it to be a vertical orientation. I think that's all it needs to be. Start sizer equals new wx box sizer. So yes, you're going to see new and delete periodically when working with wxWidgets. Just get over it. If you really don't like it, then write a letter to somebody that cares. So now we've got our basic sizer. I want to create my control on my unit under test. So unit under test equals new OLC wx palette picker. This, and just waz it on the main frame. That's all we're going to do there. I then need to add that to my sizer, which is add. Oh, I've got to get the things right here. So MP unit under test. This one is, I want it to be a portion of 1, so it's going to be the biggest thing. I want it to expand everywhere, and I like to give everything a nice generous border of 5 when I'm working with stuff. Then I need to set the sizer for this particular object, so set sizer to be this, and then I need to tell the sizer to lay itself out. And I think that's all I need to do. There's nothing else there that's necessary. So that should now have our basic control added onto the main frame, providing I've not got loads of syntax errors somewhere. Whilst that's compiling, shouldn't take too long to compile each time, just because we've changed all the files there. Right, let's have a look. Good. Well, all we've seen is it's actually changed colour, and that's okay because the default control is telling me that there is sort of a whitish background. If you recall, before it was a dark grey background. So that's good. So that's telling me my control has occupied the entire client area of this frame. Good stuff. We could actually verify that if you care about these things. We can set things like the background color. And I can specify, for example, wxRed. Is this going to work? There might have to be a... because I don't know what scrolled canvas is really going to be doing behind the scenes. Oh yeah, okay, it does work, good. So we can see that the control is actually occupying the whole frame there. Now, for those of you that don't know, I actually use wxWidgets a lot. I've used it for many years, and that's why for me a lot of this is just sort of second nature. But it did take quite a while to learn. It isn't a simple library, it's not aimed at total beginners, but I found it to be very useful, and it's always allowed me to write platform compatible code. So I don't recall a situation where I've created something on Windows that hasn't worked in Linux except for multiple document interfaces, because the flavour of Linux I was using at the time only supported sort of tabbed windows, and of course anything that was DirectX related. And I used to do quite a lot of DirectX stuff using wxWidgets as a sort of windowing platform for the front end. Alex, hello, good, nice to see you. Yes, we're doing some wxWidgets programming tonight, just to be a bit different. And you might be wondering, why is the lighting a bit strange? Well, my lighting is composed. I have an LED bulb that sits by my monitor, and if I turn it on, it's just flashing on and off. So that tells me that the LED is completely fine, but the cheapo rubbish driving circuitry behind it has deliberately burnt itself out in order to make me buy a new bulb. Absolutely unnecessary, deliberate corruption of the device, just so it has an end of life. Terrible, terrible, terrible. Right. Scrolled canvas. Now, one of the things is I don't fully know how scrolled canvas actually works, so we just need to have a look at scrolled canvas and see what's going on. Because it's a base class that has some bits I need to fill in order for it to, to work. I just want to have a look to see what are the obvious ones that I should be filling in. I'm surprised the documentation... here we go. So, get size available for scroll target, the function which must be overridden to implement the size available for the scroll target for the given size of the main window. Virtual bool should scroll to child on focus. This method can be overridden in a class to prevent scrolling the child window into view automatically when it gets focus. Okay, don't know what that one's all about. This method can be overridden in a derived class to forbid sending auto scroll events. Okay. called by the default paint handler to allow the application to define behavior without having to worry about calling do prepare DC. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, so that's actually handling some of the more complicated parts of this for me. So I think what we'll need to do first is just try and get the scroll window to actually start some scrolling by giving it an artificial area. Let's try that first, just so we try and understand what this control is doing. So I'm going to fill in. So these functions get size available for scroll target. Function which must be overridden to implement the size available for the scroll target for the given size of the main window. The implementation should decrease the size, so I don't think that's actually very relevant to what we want to do. In the example given, set target window documentation found height of the header from the vertical component size. So I want to make these, oh, there we go, enable scrolling, enable use of scroll window, but it's logically scrolled, it's called underlying window, does its thing, should be really necessary to disable physical scrolling. Don't know, but I'm going to pinch this though, the drawing stuff. Do prepare DC, that's the bit that we can override now. We may as well start throwing these things in. It's good that the controls finally automatically handle the redrawing code. You can tell this is what sort of the newer way of thinking for things. However, if you wish to draw outside from your own paint value, you must call this function yourself. Call this function to prepare the device context for drawing a scroll image. What is it doing to actually get the position? X pose, Y pose, don't know. I don't know how that's working, so that's what we need to study. Right, let's go there. Christoph, 4197, hi, yeah, I'm doing alright. So tonight we're looking at creating a custom wxWidgets control for picking colours from a specific palette. The downside is I'm using a part of wxWidgets which I've not used before called a scrolled canvas. And I'm usually used to virtual scrolling panels, but not the scroll canvas. So if I'm stirring down here, it's because I'm looking at that documentation again. So there's got to be something I can tell it to say what the size of the canvas is. Gets the position at which the visible portion of the window. So I want to override a few things. So actually I want to override the onDraw event. So it's nice that they've sort of externalized that. Let's do that first. OnDraw, virtual void. Virtual void onDraw event. Called by the default paint event handler to allow the application to define painting behavior without having to worry about doing that. Let's just see what it means by that. So this is what I was telling you about right at the start, about pinching some code from elsewhere. It seems to now provide an implementation of this. Now let's see what that means. Let's go and test that. So go to definition. Yeah, let's go back. Let's create our definition. That's better. And on here, I'm going to do dc.line, dc.draw. Hang on, why is nothing coming up? dc. Why is my IntelliSense utterly failing? Going well tonight, isn't it? dc. Dot. Right, we should be getting some additional control stuff. I'm just going to go back and I'm going to have a look at one of my implementations. So I have an implementation over here. So I'm not hiding anything. This is actually the video code that I made, and here we manually handled this onDraw and onPaint event. but there was obviously something which populated that DC. Oh dear. Don't double click on the files. That's what we've learned. Don't double click on the files. Visual Studio 2015, please go away. We don't need you right now. It'll pop up in a minute and say you're not licensed to use me, which is actually not true. There we are. Exit Visual Studio. Good. Okay. So actually in here, this is what I was looking for. We've got yes. Okay. So these sort of interesting headers. So this is it's complicated. Oh, I can't even select these things, can I? It's complicated because the DC that we're getting here is sort of a real sort of abstract interface. It's anything that can be drawn upon. Yeah, sorry, wxWidgets. I know you're watching a film tonight, but I thought we'd do some wxWidget streaming tonight. Right, so I have to do this the old-fashioned way. Include wx/dc buffer. I think we want. And DC buffer, DC client, and DC memory. And we might want one of those because we may end up double buffering some of this. There we go. So now DC has some sort of implementation. Let's just try drawing a line very simply, and I'm going to draw it because this is what I don't understand about this control. I'm going to always draw it from wx point 10, 10 to wx point 100, 100. So we're always going to draw the line there. Let's just run that and see what happens. So I'm creating a palette picking control for my asset creation tool that I'm making. So there's our line. That's very nice. That's good. And let's just see, make sure it does actually redraw it. It does redraw it, so that's good. So it's automatically handling the drawing requirements. Now it's using GDI basically to do this, so it's not going to be very fast. You don't want to be doing animations and games using these techniques at all. But what I wanted to study was actually what does this information mean? Because what we should have is a big virtual canvas in the background. So I'm just going to have a look at the constructor for the virtual canvas event. Virtual canvas panel. And I'm going to enable scrolling. Let's just see what happens. Enable scrolling in X, no, not X direction, we'll do it in Y. Okay, don't know what these mean yet. This seems like a complicated way to handle this control, but we'll see. So hopefully that's added a scroll bar, has it? No, see, it won't add a scroll bar because it doesn't know how big the virtual client needs to be. So there must be some way I can tell it the size of the client. You're not a big fan of separating logic and drawing. See, there's a get virtual size function. Let's see what that's actually. Get the size and device of the scrollable window area. Get the number of pixels per. I may as well put this on the screen. We can argue about the documentation together. Get the number of pixels per scroll unit in each direction as set by set scroll bars. So let's go on set scroll bars. This looks a bit more promising, doesn't it? Sets up the horizontal scroll bars. The first pair of parameters do the pixels per scroll step, the amount moved up and down when the arrows are pressed. The second pair gives the length of the scroll bar in scroll steps. Okay, so that's what's establishing our virtual size, I think. Okay. If that's the case, let's start populating that. So we'll do that. Let's get rid of this enable scrolling. I don't think we need to do it, but let's set scroll bars. And I want to set these to be, it's a lowercase b there, pixels per unit x. So for every step in the x direction, I'm going to say it's 20 pixels. And I'm going to do the same for y. And the number of units in the X direction I'm going to say is 1,000, so that's loads, and I'll have 1,000 in the Y. And then why does it give me X and Y pos? What do these mean? So the X pos and Y pos position to initialize the scroll bars, okay, to begin with, will not refresh window if true. Oh, and there's also set virtual size, provided for convenience. It differs from the above function. Set virtual size. Is that, see, that would be much easier. Okay, well, we'll see what happens anyway. Let's go with this one. So, setting the scroll bars, I'm hoping we'll start to see some scroll bars. I think this means that the virtual window is now 20,000 by 20,000 pixels. There we go, we do. And as I start to scroll, very nice. The DC is automatically repositioning those in the right place for me. That's actually saved a lot more work than I thought it was going to be. I thought we would have to sort of dig into the transformation required to put this line at the right place. So that's a very nice thing. Okay, right, let's flesh this out a little bit more with some sort of rather professional looking things. I'm going to want, as always with wxWidgets, you're going to have lots of getters and setters and that sort of thing. I'm going to want to basically display my colours as little rectangles. So I think we'll need to sort of specify what the size of that rectangle is going to be. So wx size, I'm using the built-in types wherever I can. I could just use something else, but use the built-in types. M size swatch, I guess, is the thing, right? That's what the little rectangle is called, isn't it? And I'm going to set, I don't think I can set it like this, but let's say 32 by 32 pixels. Is that enough? Can I do that in wxWidgets? I don't know if I can do sort of these initializer list things, because I think a size is actually a 4-element thing. Ooh, it's not complaining. It's not complaining. Well, okay, let's carry on with it for now. And what I'm going to try and do is get the visible area and draw the appropriate swatches at the given size. So let's just try drawing one to begin with. Fill, rectangle, not flood fill, gradient fill. Oh, they actually have a rect thing, but actually I don't want to use the rect thing. So we're going to use wxRect. Give me some good overlay. Oh yeah, that's the one. Point and size. So wx point is going to be 0, 0 for now. And the size is going to be M size swatch. And we'll fill in some colours. The only reason I've chosen gradient fill is that we're going to basically create a grid of these, and it would be useful to specify. So because it's a gradient, if we specify it like this, we'll be able to sort of see variation. So let's choose wx red going to wx green. Going to the east, why not? That seems to be the default, we'll run with that. So I'm hoping that just draws now in the top left something that was, what would you choose, 32 by 32 pixels in size, red to green. Very nice, and our scroll bars come in and work just as well. Good. Now I actually need to represent the palette that we're going to try drawing somewhere, don't I? So let's bang that in as well. This is just going to be a vector of standard color. Standard color, wx color. So hash include. Now there are built-in wx Windows containers. That's all I'm going to say on the matter. I'm going to use, in this case, I'm going to use. Been a bit of a fan of deck recently, so I'm going to stick with that. And we'll have a standard deck of a wx color m deck palette. There we go. So this is going to be the fundamental container that contains absolutely everything. Let's go and populate it with some dummy data on startup for now. So for int I equals 0, I is less than 255, I plus plus, and let's just bang some stuff in there. mdec palette. There is a standard command for filling containers now with stuff. Dot push back, and let's pick wx color, and we'll go for we'll just go in order. I captain. Push back. There we are. Just do a list of containers and pick one by chance. There's all sorts of range magic and filtering. Yeah, I know, but I don't know if it just gets more complicated or not. Jono Draws, hello. So I've just banged some absolute arbitrary rubbish data into this deck, or double-ended queue, whatever you want to call it. Dragon Eye, hello, nice to see you. And I've pushed into it just an assortment of grayscales for the time being. That is fundamentally relevant. And I'm just going to... I'm not going to do like a little auto for loop for this because I've got a feeling that's going to hurt us later on. I am going to actually index through it. So int x 0, x is less than, for now, I'm just going to do this absolutely explicitly, x plus plus, and we can change this to x times our swatch size. Yeah, like that, I think. We'll keep that bit the same. It's the same thing. So that's our offset is changing, but our size and everything else is fine. So that should just draw now a row of little rectangles at the top of the screen, all red to green, I think. Does C++ do function inheritance? Yeah, you'll have to describe that a little bit to me. There we go. Anyway, so that's actually doing what we wanted it to do. But I'm doing lots of wasteful drawing because I'm drawing everything all the time. One of the reasons I wanted to check for the size of the frame is obviously I want to draw as many of my palette entries as possible. But as the palette can be resized, I need those to stack up. So this is where we need to start thinking about doing some maths. It also means I need to start looking at the documentation for actually getting what is the virtual size or the client size. Let's have a look. It's not scroll bar. I guess it is just get client size because that doesn't change. And I'm going to disable scrolling in horizontal axis as well. I just don't like it. It also defeats the point of what we're trying to do. So let me find the... Hang on, I'm looking at the wrong documentation here. This is not scrolled window. This is window. I was wondering why there's so much documentation. Mounds and mounds of it. Right, so instead, that's what. So I want to get rid of you. So I want to keep you. Right, okay. Let's go back to where we're defining our scrolled canvas class. We don't want an ID. We want default position is fine. Default size is fine. But this time we only want to allow vertical scrolling. Right. So I'm guessing our set scroll bars doesn't have an effect here. On line 7. This isn't function inheritance. This is class inheritance. So this is my constructor for a class I've created, palette picker. And I have inherited and calling the constructor of the base class that I've inherited from. Right, so that's, oh no, see I've still got a vertical scroll bar, that's no good. So I'm guessing my set scroll bars doesn't quite work then. Well, that's a bit rubbish. So maybe I do need this. Maybe enable scrolling just in one direction. Let's have a look. Oh, let's put scroll bars in both directions again. Just make sure I've got the nature of the constructor correct. So the style I'm passing in is H scroll or vertical scroll. Okay, so I do actually need to do set scroll bars according to the size of the window. So I wonder if there's a way. Let's have a look at what set scroll bar says. Is there a way to never have a scroll bar in one of the directions? So the number of units in the horizontal direction, I'm going to say 0 all the time. That could well be true. Okay, so that's got rid of the scroll bar at the bottom. We've now only got our vertical one, and I'm going to use get client size to tell me how many of my swatches I can have on the screen when we're drawing them. So let's try that. We need to be a little bit more sophisticated with how we're drawing things now. So let's try this. So wx size s equals get client size. So client size is the sort of visible area of the window. Now I'm assuming it's get client size for this control and it's not some sort of get virtual size. We may have to play with that function. So I know that given that size I can fit how many swatches into that panel. So let's have a look. So int n swatch pitch, which is how many I can get going across the screen, is going to be s.x divided by the size of our swatch.x. So that's an integer division, that's fine, that's what I want. Now I can go through all of my elements here. I know I've got 255 things to draw. Yeah, I'm going to do it one way now, and then we're going to end up changing this later. So I'm thinking sort of maybe too far ahead. Let's for now just change that to the index of the palette, and we will calculate x and y based on that index. So x is always going to be the index mod the swatch pitch, and y is going to be the index integer divided by the swatch pitch. So that gives us our sort of cellular location, but then we would need to inflate that by the swatch size to turn it into the pixel space. This is kind of the inverse of what we do on all of the channels, right? Where we usually would always have y times width plus x. Here instead, I'm doing it the other way around. I've got that sort of index and I'm trying to work out the x and y coordinates from it. This is not the right way to do this fundamentally, but I still want to see. We're learning about how to draw cells in this canvas. Oh, hang on, a few things have been happening. Recently made a wxWidgets application for clocking in and out of work. Could video help me go and get it started? Oh, well, that's good. Thank you, Dangerous Tuber. Yeah, it's I like wxWidgets. I've written. I make money selling software written in wxWidgets, so it does all right for me. May the swatch be with you. Spaceballs. Oh dear. Oh dear. I can hear a little X10 chatting away somewhere. Right, let's fill this in. So we now know this is no longer x, this is going to... Oh, it is x. And this one is y times... I'm guessing I could do this smarter, right? I could multiply the point simply by the size, and I'm sure that it's got the overloads to handle all of that. So that's going to be now a rectangle in the right place, based on the swatch size. 255 of them. Hopefully what we should see is that as I drag the screen horizontally, it changes. We'll see. This is all unknown. I've not used a scrolled canvas before. I've used a scrolled window a few times. Good. It looks like we don't quite get to the end. Also, it's not clearing the background either. In fact, it's not redrawing anything. So, I think we need to be a little bit more responsive to on size. Why is that? So it does kind of work. See that it's getting longer, but it's not colouring in what's called the dirty areas. So I need to override the on size event. Now, in the videos, I did this quite differently. I used to create an event table. I have now moved away from event tables and instead prefer to use connect, which is still not the desired way to do this. Instead, people prefer that you use bind, but I don't understand bind, so I'm not going to use it. Let's bang in an override for when we get resized. On size, wxSize event, evt, override. No, it's not an override, is it? It's just I've got to actually bind this together. Let's go and create it first. Add you in. There we go. And we'll come back to up here. Now I have to try and remember this horrible syntax for doing this. Connect event type. Could be much easier just to grab this code from somewhere. The event type, it's not just the same as specifying wxSize event. Let me open up a thing. wxSize event class reference. That's it. Good. Right, I think this one is wx evt size. Right, the object event function. It's a mess, this, isn't it? Let me just have a look at some other project code for a second, where I've got the syntax for this sort of to hand, ready to go, he says optimistically. Well, actually, I can have a look in here, can't I? So I've got this everywhere, to be honest. This is render panel. So it looks like this. Okay, wxSize event handler and the thing that I'm passing in. Right, okay. Close that back up. wxSize event handler. I've lost my connect now. Where's my connect gone? Was I putting my connect in the wrong place? I was putting my connect in the wrong place. Connect goes in here. Right. Connect wxSize event. wxSize event handler. And in that we pass in our what we call this class OLC wx palette picker. In this case, it's on size. I think that's all there is to it, but I've got a suspicion we do need to tell the size event override to at least behave properly and tell the base class underneath that the size has changed. So we'll go and do that manually. Wx scrolled canvas on size evt. Was that what it was? Handle on size. Yeah, I think that's a big bag of nasty waiting to go horribly wrong there. Let's just see what's happening next. I've got a feeling that might thoroughly destroy our scroll bars. I don't know what intelligence this class is doing behind the scenes. Let's catch up with some of the thing. You all heard extend, did you? Just use lambda function. No, lambda functions are nasty. Josh, sorry, good afternoon from Canada. Looks like you may have missed the majority. No, not yet. Really, we're about halfway through. Well, maybe not even that. We've not even got to displaying sort of a palette or anything yet. Right, play. So I just want to see. We've not sort of knackered the scroll event. So hopefully, if I put in a refresh event here. Well, that's why I've not used bind. There we go. Oh yeah. Okay, so now we've got all of the cells in our palette responsive to the size of the panel being used to display them. That's quite nice. Okay, so now we've got quite a few other messages that we need to intercept because we want to be able to interact with this palette. Things like where the mouse is in this this array in order to get the correct information out of it, and also the ability to sort of click and do other things. Now, one of the things I want is when the mouse is over something that exists within the palette, that it sort of inflates that rectangle so you can see that you're over it. And maybe also displays the name. Now, for my application, I want my palette entries to have an optional name associated with it. Now, it could very well be red, green, blue, etc., etc. But it could also be things such as no-go area or static camera zone or something like that. So the palette is really just a way of choosing a brush to paint something with, and what that something is entirely interpreted by the application. But before we get that far, I'm just going to have one last mouthful of this tea, because it's gone very, very cold and it's not very nice. And I'm also going to have what I'm eating tonight, because this is a long stream so far. I have no plan on stopping just yet. Tonight I am eating, not sponsored by, I'm eating treelets. See? Treeslets. Treeslets. And they are little cheesy, salty Christmas trees. They're actually very delicious. And once you start eating one, you can't stop eating any. Oh. Whoa. These are the worst thing to have next to your programming setup. Right. Okay, good. So now let's start actually loading in some palette things. Now the reason I think actually our palette picker is not going to exist directly as a scrolled canvas, but instead in some master panel, is because I do actually want some traditional controls actually on this window too. So before we get too stuck into this, I am going to reorganize things just a little bit. I'm going to change my palette picker class to be I'm going to change that to be palette canvas. So this is actually where we're going to be drawing things. So let's just change that over. Bit of refactoring here. Palette canvas. Palette canvas. Now I'm not doing it automatically because I like to sort of just verify manually the things that I'm doing. And that one. There we go. Palette canvas. Now, of course, that's broken our main because that's looking for a palette picker. But I'm going to add now back in the palette picker control and create this as a standard control window. Same sort of thing. Constructor and destructor, but that's going to inherit from a regular panel. And one of the things this is going to contain, I'm going to have to do this the other way around, isn't it? Is my palette canvas control. And we'll just simply call that MP canvas equals null pointer. Right. And the reason I'm doing this is I want to add some additional controls to this overall control and not have to do them manually. I'm going to let wxWidgets just handle it all for me. Let's bang this down here. I think that prefers to be down here. Right, so now I've got my canvas. I need to add in these bits. There we go. So the canvas is handling all of the complicated actual selection stuff, but this control is going to handle the canvas. MP canvas equals new palette canvas this. That's all I need to add in. You don't need to do the deletes in wxWidgets. I know that's frightening to some people, but it's just one of those things. You don't need to do it. But I do need to borrow that sizer code that we had for here. So this is now, it's still palette picker, still a unit under test. I want to duplicate this. Let's go and grab some of this code. Because fundamentally what I want this to look like is a bit different. Let's get rid of this and we'll just borrow some code that we're writing in here. I want my sizer to contain the following sort of buttons. 1, 2, 3, and I want this to be horizontal. You got twist next to you. You really think X10 is going to let me stream for so long? I've been allowed to stream tonight. I've been using a language with garbage collection for the first time recently. It's unreasonably settling. Yeah, it does take a bit of getting used to, particularly when your program's running fine and everything's going well and your game looks brilliant, and then suddenly there's this unpredictable just drop in frame rate as it's doing the garbage collection. Now I'm just going to sort of use WX Form Builder a bit to write some of the code for me. So I'm going to have a button add. Oh, hang on, I've got a ping. Just a second. Okay. It's a text to tell me that X10 is definitely teething, which is something we're going through at the moment. I want to have a plus symbol on you, and I'm going to set your maximum size to be 24 by 24. Yeah. Do you know what? No, I'm going to stick with 32 by 32. That's what we're doing for everything at the moment. 32 by 32. This one is going to be in a similar vein. mbtn remove. And we'll give that the minus symbol. Set that to be the same, 32 by 32. I'm just going to shrink down this, so I can't shrink down that size of, so I'll just add this to a momentary size. There we go. Remove. You can be horizontal. So now I can at least have the sizer behave in the same way. There we go. And you are going to be mbtn menu. And I'm just going to put 3 dots on you. 32 by 32. And then I think I want, for the rest of that, just a regular label. And that label is going to display the name of the palette color should it exist. Now the only reason I've done this in Form Builder is it's going to save me some time. Label color. And we'll leave that as blank for the time being. Right, so we've got you, we've got you, we've got you. The events I'm going to add in are on palette menu. On palette remove, on palette add. Right, that'll do for the time being. Now normally you would derive from this class that it's created and implement it that way, but I'm not. I'm just going to steal this code outright. simply because it's quicker. So I've got my 3 buttons and my static text control and my events that have all been created for me there. Good. Let's go to the palette picker control. Now the palette picker control contains this additional stuff. Now this is why I wanted to mess around with the sizes for palette picker. By stealing the sizer code that I've already written. That's right. Palette pickers constructor. There we are. So we create the canvas, and then I also want to create these additional controls, which I've just done in Form Builder. So I'm just going to drag that code in too, which is all of that there. Horizontal sizer, add you, add you, add you, and sort that out. Good. Yeah, this is a palette picker for an existing project. So I'm working on some tools to help me write some games and actually do some work stuff too. So I wanted this to be a little bit more than just this bog standard color picker tool. And I'll show you what that means in a minute. Right, so I'm just going to create the sizer up here. Now it creates all these horrible names in Form Builder, so I don't like them. I'm just going to have that as SZRV. Well, that one's actually going to be my SZRH, isn't it? So equals a new box sizer horizontal. I'm going to take U, and we'll have U. And you, and you, and you're going to be my SZRV. There we are. Right, so I've created my add button, I've created my remove button, I've created my menu button, and I've created my static text, and then I've created my vertical sizer. To which I'm going to add my unit under test, which is no longer unit under test, that's now the canvas itself. And I'm going to add to that the canvas. And I'm also going to add to that, with 0 proportion on here, the other sizer. SZRH, so at the bottom of the canvas I'm going to get my 3 little buttons, and then I'm going to add to the sizer of the overall panel. There we go, we're getting there, we're getting there, we're getting there. Right, why have I got some red wigglies? What's going on? Box sizer is undefined. Is it? Is it really? Button is undefined. Is that going to be the next one? Static text is undefined. Really? Let's cheat a little bit. wx.each. There we go. Ooh. What? There we are. Excellent. Probably don't even need the scroll win now, so that's going to sort you out. And that's sorted out most of the red wigglies over here. So all that's left is the size event handler, because that changed to canvas, didn't it? There we are. Yeah, so this is pretty confusing stuff for those that don't follow along with wxWidgets. Copying this from other projects of yours? No, not actually. This is all brand new. That's why we're getting so many mistakes as we go along. SZRH. Yep, that looks good, that looks fine. We've not added the events on yet. MP canvas, did I not call it MB canvas? Value type, oh, right, canvas. Manual refactoring, there we go. fix errors as you're going on. So now we've got two classes. One is a regular bog standard panel, and it's that regular bog standard panel which we add to the frame. Now within our regular bog standard panel, we now contain a canvas. In fact, we've got two canvases we don't need. Yes. So within our bog standard panel, we've got a set of buttons and our self-drawing, self-scrolling thing. Okay, let's run it. Let's see what happens. Ooh, what have we got? What have we got? Get layout direction, invalid window. Did I add the wrong sizer to my thing? Continue. Ooh, okay. Have I added the wrong sizer to something somewhere? Ooh, here we go. Start digging all this out. I need my little bot thing, don't I, when I do these bugs. Size of V is a new thing. Add that. That looks fine. It looks like the layout thing is what's failed here. What have I just missed something really obvious here? I feel like I'm adding things to the wrong sizer. Not so sure. Add. Palette. Oh, hang on. It's because we've not initialized our parent class. Panel parent. Right, so nothing had been pre-established. Let's see. There's an error you don't see every day. Do you want to stop debugging? Yes, I do. That was a horrible mess, wasn't it? So I hadn't told the control, at least I hope this is the problem, I hadn't told the control actually what it was. There we go, that looks a bit better. So now my palette panel is occupying the entire frame, and you can see down here I've got my three regular buttons. And the canvas is behaving just like the canvas did before. So when this becomes a component somewhere else in a program, as you can see, let's just make that so it's a strange number, there we are. Hopefully we can start to see it becomes a slightly more flexible tool. Right. Let's start monkeying about with some of the more interesting things going on here. Sleeping Insomniac, hello. Indeed, hello. That makes me want some treelets to get over the humiliation and the shame of that massive, colossal fail. Well. Right. Good. So the palette canvas is going to be the thing that owns the set of colours. That's still, I'm going to retain that. So the palette picker will now access things via appropriate methods of the palette canvas. But do I want to do this mouse stuff? I think I do want to do this mouse stuff. I think what I want is that as I'm moving my mouse over the cells, that excuse me, that they get bigger in size. So let's start doing that. We're going to have on mouse move wx mouse event evt evt. And we know that we're going to want to be able to click on things as well. So on mouse left down. So that's the left button being pressed down. Okay. let's give those some bodies. And we want to work out which cell are we currently over at any given time. So how do we do that? I think in this instance we can actually use some of the built-in things. So let's turn our cell from screen coordinate space into cell space, which is just simply a case of taking the mouse's coordinate and dividing that by our swatch size. SZ swatch. I'm hoping that the override. See, this is what I was a bit concerned about. Yes, I don't think it does. That was maybe a bit foolish to actually use size as a thing there, because we can't easily do maths with it. Okay, that's a change we'll make now. Okay, as we're doing this, we're going along. So instead of that being a wx size, which makes more sense, I'm actually just going to store that as a wx point. I think that only affects the drawing routine because it was expecting a wx size here. But to be fair, it looks like the rectangle constructor is quite happy with a point and a point. It's just that point and a point is now inaccurate because it needs to be this one plus that one. Anyway, we're going to come back to all of this drawing routine, so it's not worth getting too excited about. I might as well construct this rect manually now. So rect is the r dot x. Can we do this? R dot set top left. Set top left is now our x and y, so it's that. It's what we've already got. R dot set size, is that a thing? Set size, excellent, is our swatch. We see that's the same problem here. Wx size, this is a mess, isn't it? wxWidgets, come on, sort yourself out. So that's going to be that. Right. Now we can just draw the rectangle like that, which now means we've got our point type in a form which it should make sense. So this is a, what's this saying now? So this is a point is okay, so point divided by point. Why doesn't it allow that? Point divided by point really doesn't allow that? Ugh, that's a mess. OLC VF2D for the win here. Operator is ambiguous. How is that ambiguous? Right, we're going to end up doing this manually then. Fine. Cell.x equals position.x divided by swatch.x, and the same applies for y. Ugh. So that's our currently hovered over cells. You know what? In fact, that sounds like a word that we're going to need for a bit. So let's do wx point mp cell hover. And I think we're also going to want mp cell selected as well. So mp cell hover is whatever that is. Fine. And we're going to need to refresh every time we move the mouse. And that's a bit costly to do. Have a quick look at some of the chat. No new chat. Oh, too engrossed in wxWidgets, the nuances of the operator overloading of the divide operator between position types in wxWidgets. It's fascinating Friday evening entertainment. So mouse move is giving me the hover position, and I want to be able to draw the cell that I'm hovering over as a bit larger. But I've just changed my drawing routine, so I just want to make sure that that actually still works. Let's just double check that. Just make sure that we're not going to get caught out by our set size doing something strange to the definition of the rectangle. No, good. Right, we don't want to fill with a gradient anymore. We want to actually fill with the colour of the palette at that location. So this happens to be dc.fillRect doesn't exist because it's drawRect. But you have to set the brush and things appropriately. So draw rectangle. There we go. And that's just simply R now, because we're going to set the pen and the brush of our device context to match what we want it to look like. So wx pen equals get pen. dc.getPen. There we are. And wx brush. In fact, can I make these references? I don't know if you can do this. No. Okay. Brush equals dc.getBrush. The pen itself, I'm only going to set it once. I just basically want it to have a width of 1, and I want it to be black. The pen is used for setting things like drawing the boundary conditions, the colours. Yeah, you can't beat a few treeslets, especially towards Christmas. They are a nice treat. Now I need to set the pen, don't I? dc.setPen pen. Now brushes are a bit different. I need to set the colour depending on what the colour of the swatch is. So we've specified the rectangle. Now we specify the brush. So brush.setColor is going to be our mdec palette I. Okay, and we need to set the brush. dc.setBrush. So now we should see basically what looks like a load of black rectangles fading to white with black outlines. If I've got this all right. There's no guarantees that I get this all right. Well, what do you know? Okay. And as we reshape the window, we can see that the palette sort of responsively reacts. And we've still set up our scrolling options. Now, we probably do need to change this scroll bar based on how many swatches can be seen vertically, but we can do that in a bit. Let's keep the momentum going with the palette selection at the moment. So what is this for? This is for selecting colours, Magetta. Selecting colours. Because it's much better than this. If I go to here, I go to additional and bang you onto the thing. Right. This is the window that we all know and love for selecting colours. And it's fine, and we will be using this to establish new entries for the palette. But it's not a nice way to start choosing colours, particularly when you want your palette to represent all sorts of. I shouldn't have put these here. These should be banned. These are lethal. The stream ends when the trees are gone. I'll need to go to the shop and buy more trees. So let's populate some of these things now. What I wanted was the palette that you're hovering over to sort of swell in size, as it were. Now, let's see how we can handle that. So that's going to draw all of the swatches, but I do want to draw specifically the swatch that I'm hovering over. Draw hovered swatch, and this is a little bit different. I can actually take a good chunk of that code, because we know that the hovered, what did we say? We call it hovered cell, did we? What was it? Where's my mouse event? No, cell hover. Curiously, we want to sort of create an index, which is our normal way of doing things. No, hang on, what did I call this? MP cell hover. That was a bad name. I'll have to change that later. Y times n swatch pitch, which is how many we can see, plus MP cell hover.x. Now that's what we're familiar with. We do that all the time on the channel. That gives you my eye, and you might think I'm kind of working a little bit backwards here, but I'm just sort of showing how the logic is flowing out, because one of the things this allows me to do is sort of an early rejection if we're hovering over a cell which doesn't exist within the palette. So if I is greater than or equal to 0 and I is less than or equal to 255, then we can continue. Now I'm going to create the rectangle in exactly the same way as I was doing it before, but I'm going to use a rather nifty command that's built into wxWidgets, which is called inflate. And I can inflate by a specific size, I think. So if I inflate it by 8 pixels in both the X and Y axis and draw it, well, let's see what happens. This is the first time I've tried using something like this. I've used inflate before, but I just want to see if this does actually kind of look cool. Not drawing anything, so I'm guessing we might need to run some debugger here. Oh, it's drawing it up there. It's drawing it up in the top left, because it's always coming back as 0. Why have I messed up here? Oh, we've not connected the mouse move event. The most obvious thing. Connect wxEVT mouse. What are these called? Mouse. It's motion. EVT motion. WX mouse event handler. We'll see WX canvas on mouse move. So that should now link it to the. Let's have a look. Well, it does work, right? So it's drawing the larger swatch as I move the mouse. But firstly, it's a real horrible mess. So what we can see here is just how slow using Windows GDI to do anything is. This is why you never want to use these things to do your games. Now, there's two things we can do to sort of make this a bit better, and we should probably do quite a few of these things just to make things a little bit more optimal. Firstly, I don't need to draw every time I move the mouse. I should really only draw when the hovered cell changes. So let's make that as our first implementation. Every time we call refresh, that's a very costly operation to do. So let's do this. WX point new hover. Oh, we're just going to call it hover. You know what? I'm just going to call it H. There we are. And we'll change U2 to H like that. Right. if h is not equal to mp cell hover, then mp cell hover equals h, and refresh. Right, so now at least we're only going to redraw when the actual cell we're hovering over does indeed change. That will help somewhat, but it's not going to get rid of the problem. Yeah, a bit flickery. And there's a reason it's flickery too, and it's a legitimate reason, and wxWidgets actually gives us some tools to help deal with that. So this is far less flickery, but still flickery. It is actually doing what we want it to do. So you can see as I hover over the colour, I get like a magnified version of it, which I think is quite nice. And that seems to work. Even when we've scrolled the screen around. So yes, that's quite nice. I like that, but still too flickery. So I need to tell wxWidgets that actually I don't want it every time it's got to redraw its own background. I'm going to take control of that. So I'm going to tell the canvas to do how to do that in the constructor. Now I need to remember what this is called. Set background style is the thing, but what are the properties? So wx background, is it? Background? No. I'll do its background style. We're going to do custom. Let's try that. So now the control might appear black, because there's, or full of noise, because there's generally nothing there to tell it to erase the background each time. Ooh, hang on, we fell out of range somewhere. Let's not be too excited with the mouse. Right, so that now doesn't flicker, but as you just saw, it doesn't do sort of any kind of sensible erasure of the things going on in the background. Now we did have a problem that we went, yeah, okay, we got caught out there. That shouldn't happen, should it? I wonder if that happens once we've done a resize. Let's try a resize to there. Okay, it does. Subscript out of range. Now let's we'll just quickly have a look at the debugger for that. Let's go into the call stack, quickly work out why we're looking at something else. Oh, we're actually looking at 255. Oh, because we were less than or equal to 255. How many things am I actually putting in this? Oh. Okay. Hopefully that's got rid of that. Yeah, that's nice. Well, calculating the region to repaint might not actually be that easy, but one of the things I can do is actually just clear the DC myself rather than making wxWidgets sort of go and do it all. I've also got an interesting thing there, that because I've got swatches behind my scroll bar, see? There's also some sort of interesting glitchy stuff going on there. We also want to redraw things when we resize, so that'll also help there. Refresh, we are doing, but we want to clear the background of my thing, which is just simply DC clear. Now I don't know I can't remember what the colour was. I'm guessing it's black. Oof, that's introduced our flicker again. Oh dear. So let's add in set double buffered to true. There we go. Much nicer. Right, we're in control, although now we've got this strange scenario, there we go, where we've got this sort of dead space here. Because I don't want to display sort of partial swatches. Might be a trickier problem to solve than you might think that. Anyway, it looks like we've got sort of the swatch highlighter bit working. Now I want to do a swatch sort of selection rectangle, so that looks quite nice too. And oh, that's even better. Because I've used the built-in scrolled canvas, I can use the middle mouse wheel to move around. Why are we're not offsetting in the y-axis? Ooh, that's interesting. That's because my mouse coordinate that I'm reading isn't in scrolled space. That's a bit cheeky, isn't it? So I need to add to my mouse coordinate that I'm getting in from the event. I wonder if the scroll class actually contains some sort of transformation for me to do that. Let's have a look. Let's pull up the documentation. Right, here's my scrolled windows class. If you don't wish to calculate your own scrolling, you must do that. Yeah, I've done all that. To set the device origin, yeah, but it's not that, it's the mouse event. So I want to be able to just take in a mouse coordinate and get it to blast it in the right place. Now we saw an example for that, didn't we, somewhere? How do I transform the mouse coordinate into the virtual space? This must exist. There must be a way to do this. I mean, the easiest way to do it, if it doesn't exist, is just to get my top left coordinate, which I guess is this getViewStart function. Simple overload of getViewStart. Okay, if either of the scroll bars is not at the home position, will be greater than 0. Yeah, okay, getViewStart. So it's getViewStart. I've got to do the maths manually. Ugh, it's a bit of a drag, isn't it? So it's getViewStart. It's this minus getViewStart, isn't it? So we'll bang you in there. Minus getViewStart dot x and y. Okay, so that's still working nicely there. That's still working nicely there. Ah. It says here, oh, key I think actually talking about what we're talking about. Pretty sure it's not drawing the last one until you hover over it. The loop drawing then is set to if less than 255. I believe it should be 256. Not sure. It's less than or equal to. Oh, you mean, oh, so you weren't actually drawing enough of the things. Okay, that we're going to change to the size of the deck. So at the moment, yeah, no, you're right, it's not drawing enough. That's probably why that last cell is appearing there, even though it shouldn't be. But now, I just want to make sure, okay, we've still got our vertical offset issue there. So getViewStart. Interestingly, is it related kind of to? No, so getViewStart's not doing anything at all. getViewStart, so we'll get the mouse. Oh, hang on, I've done my sums the wrong way around here, haven't I? It is getPositionX plus getViewStart. I'm still assuming that this is coming in some sort of global canvas space. It's not. This is coming in just window space. Right, so that's fine there. That's fine there. Still not fine there. How many times can I get this wrong? Not enough. I get the event position of the mouse. Get view. It's just like getViewStart is just not returning a sensible value. Let's just have a quick look at the documentation for getViewStart. Oh. Really? How did it even compile? Oh no, there we are. Simple overload of that. See that function for more info. The position are in logical scroll units. So to convert to pixels, you'll have to multiply by the number of pixels. Oh, right, so I can't remember what we set that as. So the number of logical scroll units we set up here, didn't we? Pixels per unit is 20, so it's coming back in that. So we need to multiply this by 20. Wow. Obviously, we'll change that to be a multiple of the swatch size later on. So at least we're only scrolling in whole swatches. But okay, so that's working. That's working. And that's working. There we go. So we've offset it vertically, and that's working again now. Good. Wow. Okay, so we've got several different spatial transformations going on there. I had to deal with this making tile selection for bitmapper. It wasn't that bad in my case, though the Y increment was known. It's a bit different when you've got like full control over your pixel space as well. Sort of little, weird things like this that we're not working in pixel space, we're working in unit space. Because I messed up, I need to console myself with some treelets. Sorry. Oh, you set me to play sound effects. That might be quite fun. It's not very often these days that I actually experience compile errors. I know that sounds really big-headed. Only because you get the little red wigglies. And so you do tend to see the errors pretty quickly. Unless you're doing some like really complicated template stuff, then it all ends up being a mess. Right. Let's change these from grayscale to something just a little bit more interesting. We'll quickly hack in something to make this. Do I want that 255 or 256? I think I did that originally on the Pixel game engine and got it wrong. I'm just doing this just to change it from grayscale to something a bit more pretty. Then maybe, if necessary, I can make the thumbnail look a bit better. Hey, Danicron. That's better. There we go. So at least now we can see which one we're highlighting over. That's good. And as I change the window, they're all zipping about. That's good. I can scroll up and down here. That's nice. So really what I want now is to know what the name of the thing is that I'm hovering over. Now that's easy enough. That's just changing the message that's displayed in this text box. Now there's two ways to do that in wxWidgets. There's the hack way, which is passing pointers all over the place, or there's the correct way. And the correct way is to create an event that fires when we change the hover. And it's a bit involved actually creating an event for just like one or two things, but it's one of those things that once you've done it, you'll find lots of uses for it later on. It does just make your life easier to put in the groundwork now. So I think that's what I'm going to do. We'll create a custom event class and get our canvas component to throw the events to the picker component, which can respond to them and change the nature of the GUI as required. And then also the picker component is also going to throw some events. Now it might be interesting that we can actually reuse the same events from the picker component. So I think we will throw in the events into the sort of overall namespace and use them for both components. Now the event stuff is a little bit well, there's a lot to it, so I'm going to steal the code. Simple as that. I'm trying to think, where have I recently been working with these things? I think it was an editor panel. There we go. So I'm just going to steal U2 to begin with, and we'll come back to palette picker.h and throw these in. So we'll have a panel picker event. So we're going to create our own event type here, and it's going to behave in exactly the same way that all of the other wxWidgets events work. That's why it's a bit more involved, but it becomes then part of the wxWidgets ecosystem. Get rid of my little prefix of C there, and we'll change these to be a panel event. That's no good. Palette picker event, and we'll change this one to ppevt hover change, and we'll also change. We'll have this one to ppevt selection. So this one, first one, is going to be when the one we're hovering over is changed. This one becomes the selection. First time chat from viewer. Oh, it's a reply to Magetsa. Magetsa, you're stealing my first time chats, man. That's no good. Glottis the mechanic. That's interesting that you've chosen Glottis the mechanic there. You see, the car isn't. You're not too big. The car is just too small. Right. What am I doing here? Palette picker event. Yeah, that's what we're doing. Grim Fandango, by the way, I think is probably. It's up there in my probably top 5 games of all time. I think it's absolutely superb. It's a beautiful story. The puzzles are fun and engaging, and it doesn't matter. Sometimes there's a few repetitive elements. It's always funny and engaging. Really worth playing. Right, I've thrown 2 big horrible macros into the mix here, but you know what? They actually get to stay there. That's the best bit. And I'm going to go and steal the rest of the code. Now, you think all it is defining a macro. Oh, no. We have to define the event, and then we have to define all sorts of other bits and pieces. It gets very exciting, this now. So I'm just going to grab all of that code, and we're going to copy and paste our way through all of this. Which is, we're still in the header file here. Something went ping. Danicron, 100 bits. Excellent. Thank you very much. Right. Okay. We'll change this one. Our default event is just going to be selection, something like that. And this is going to be a palette picker event. Palette picker, palette picker, palette picker, palette picker. We're going to get rid of all those. Palette picker. We're going to get rid of all those, and we're going to get rid of these, but we're going to change these because these are going to get changed to. I want it to actually return the colour because that would be quite a useful thing. But I also want it to return the index as well. So we'll have that as. We'll do, you know what? We'll just have it as an int. Index, so that's going to be the palette index, and I'm also going to get it to return the name. So basically, everything about the color is being returned. Name, and what else are we storing along this information? Alpha is a possibility, although we can bodge that in a bit later on. Right, C++ environment, Visual Studio 19 of Wonder. Automatically give me some getters and setters for these, please. Doesn't exist. Void set color const wx color C. I don't know what type color fundamentally is, so I'm going to pass that by reference. Put the thing on the wrong side. Set color, right. Void set index const int I. void set name const wx string s. What does the green line mean? Green line, green line, green line. Green. There's a green line here down the side of the screen vertically. Or this green line here. This green line is currently Visual Studio slapping my wrist, saying you're using macros and the cool kids now don't use macros. Macros are not good. And it's also, there's a second half to this macro which we've not implemented on the other page. I want to just add in these getters whilst I'm in the middle of this. Right, wx color. Oh. Wx color. Get color. Const. Return. Color. This is tedious, isn't it? Now, will it be smart enough to automatically turn that to just reference? Or do I actually still need to specify sort of reference like that? I don't think I need the const at the front, do I? Oh, yes, I do. Okay. Surrounded by consts. Int get index const return index. Ooh, come on, in auto whatever you're called, stop moving my code around. And wx string what? Get name name. Also needs a const. Const everywhere. Right? So I don't know which green line you're referring to, but that's the only one I can see on my screen that is green. Is this one vertically down here? And if it is that you're referring to, green means I have changed that in the file today, or at least since I started this session. Right, so we've got our copy constructor that we need to implement as well. Set this dot set color event dot get color. This set index event dot get index. This. Now you might be thinking, oh, there's so many different tips and tricks and ways to get around doing it so bloated and manually and like this. And you're absolutely right. There's no reason to do it sort of with this level of verbosity. But the idea is I'm writing a utility widget. And I think utility widgets should be sort of coated in getters and setters, and you should use getters and setters to access that information. Particularly, it's going to be, the idea is it's used by somebody else. It's not often you actually write code which is the intention of is to be used by somebody else. Get name, right? There we go. Alter, is it good to talk to yourself while trying to think through an algorithm? I just always talk to myself. I mean, it's the best conversation I get, sadly. So I have no problems with it. Palette picker event. Right, now we've got these horrible things going on. You can see all sorts of going things. So palette picker function is the first thing. Palette picker event. Then we've got palette picker handler, which takes our palette picker function and sticks it in there. So that was actually, we need to name that specifically. Palette picker function is going to be selection. Select function, select handler, select function. And then we want one for hover. Oof. Hover, hover, and hover. Now, you might think we've jumped through properly some hoops here to get this far. And we've still not quite finished because we've got to go and now define those events. I can go and have a look in my editor panel CPP file up here. This is much simpler. It's just this bit. So I just want one of those as an example. Palette picker CPP. And what did we call the things? I can't even remember. So long ago now. Hover, change, and selection. Do you know what? I'm just going to take that there, and I'm going to bang that in there, and I'm going to change this bit to fine, and I'm going to change this bit to LC wx, that bit there. Right. Okay, so that's now defined our entirely custom events for everything that's going on in the system. I'll just do a quick compile, make sure we're not causing any problems. Now I can use all of the standard wxWidgets sort of architecture, infrastructure, utility code, everything to handle the events. I have become one with the WX Windows event system, which is a really nice thing to do, because that means people can now interact with the events that my classes are throwing in a way that they're familiar with within the wxWidgets environment. They work with event tables, they work with the connect function, they work with the bind functions. It's all just legit. It's all good stuff. Alta, I did it while trying to figure out how to map out traversable tiles in a range around a unit and found it helpful. Well, good. Yeah, I don't think there's a problem with talking to yourself. Yeah, if you're talking to yourself and realise that you're bullying yourself, then you've probably got some problems that you need to talk through with somebody in reality rather than online. Right, so now we've created these events, what are we doing with them? I'm going to get rid of all these files because that's confusing me. And I'm going to go back to my palette picker, and we can now put in an event handler for our palette picker class. So we can actually handle the events that are being thrown by the canvas. So let's do that. Void on palette selection was a WX, it wasn't WX, it's a palette picker event. And we've got on palette hover, which is also a palette picker event. First time chat from Prison Mike Gaming. Talking yourself through a problem is a very common rubber ducking. Pixel Paint Studio when? my little sort of vector classes and things, they're coming on. Right, so on selection, on hover. Right, so let's give those some bodies and let's see what's going on. So what we can do now is respond to the on hover event. I actually need to connect to the events, don't I, before doing anything else. So on palette picker here, right, connect palette. This is where we need to pick that fancy name that we said. We said PPEVT selection to a palette picker hover select handler, and we give it the class, which was OLC WX palette picker on palette selection. Oh, right, I got enough brackets and things there, and we'll just throw in hover as well. On palette hover, hover. I can't remember what we called this one. PPPEVT hover change. Okay. So I've got those two events. I'm now sensitive to those events happening. We'll just change you over to a disconnect there. So what you're seeing, hopefully, I know it's been a long stream, and that's quite intentional, is that when you want to do custom controls for real, And this is a simple one. There's actually a lot of things to think about in terms of constructing your application interface. So now I've got my hover thing. I've got access to information in the event. I don't have name information just yet. So what I will do is set this to be the index that we get. Well, unless is there a string return function for color? I don't know. Let's have a look. evt.getColor. Is there a toString or something like that? I don't think there is, sadly. Oh, get as string. No idea what that does. No idea at all. No, that can't be sensible. No. That means red is going to be. I've not got red and things. Okay, I'm going to choose the index. It's not validator either. It's get value. Oh, it's not even set values. It's when it's a label control. It's set text, is it? Set label. Set label. Wx string format. Let's just do it this way. And all I want to do is just display the index of the thing. %d, comma evt.getIndex. Right. Got to go. Okay, Dragon Eye, thank you very much for stopping by. Oh, we've got some errors. I'll have a look at those in a minute. Discord, so yes, there's a bunch of links there. Good bot, good bot. Event system magic, yeah, and it's wxWidgets event system magic as well. And first time chat from Goodies2878. I can't even make out what that is, but it looks like martial artist being surprised by something. I've no idea, can't see. Right, what have we got here? Ooh, undefined, unresolved externals. Everybody loves these. That might be when I'm connecting to the things. I wonder if it doesn't like. I have had in the past some problems with namespaces and this sort of thing. Because in my palette picker CPP file up here, did I actually include these in the namespace? No, I didn't. Right. Ugh, after all that, it's not worked anyway. Well, we'll go and dig out, see what's happening. Did I actually add the text control? Did we actually create it and construct it? LBL color. LBL color. Well, let's. Oh, I'm not throwing the event, am I? Oh dear. Okay, so the reason it's not working, even though we handle all that event code, is I've not actually thrown the event in the event of us actually hovering. So let's populate that. So in this case, it's a paint picker event. Not paint picker event. Palette picker event. E. And it's just E. Yeah. The nature of the event. So what was it? It was a PP EVT. In this case, it was hover change. And I want to populate E with set color mdec. Now, you see, we don't have any sort of quick ways to get access to this information. So this is screaming out that we need some utility functions to handle these conversions. Because I kind of have to do that bit again, which is a bit messy. We'll just copy it in for now and then tidy that sort of stuff up later on. So now I've got a thing with my palette information, which is I. I don't need the X and Y anymore. E.set index is I. E.set name currently unknown, because we've not supported names anywhere in this system just yet. I don't need those, but I do need the swatch pitch thing. I think we're going to have to throw that into on size now. We'll just take it from get client. We'll do exactly the same thing again there. Right. Yeah, client. Right. So a lot of scope for removing the duplicated code there. Worry about that some other time. Oh, still not throwing the event. I've created it. Now I need to do wx post event, and we want to give that to our parent. And the event we're posting is the one we've just created. Right. On my screen looks like an angry turnip. Oh look, everybody, you can buy followers, primes and viewers on whatever that was. Oh, well, we can't now. Does the next version of PG include the fix for pixel dimension inconsistencies in floating point space? No. Right, there we go. So you can barely see it, I'm sure, on the size of the screen. But at the bottom, in the text box, well, the label box, we're now getting the index of the cell that we've hovered over. Now that will eventually be the name of the cell that we've hovered over. Which is quite useful. I want names to actually be meaningful. It's not just red, blue, and green. It could be, this is the factory floor, or this is the particular mountain that we're using for that region. A bit more descriptive as a tool. Just going to have some trees. Oh, coding fuel. Oh, let me check that. Right. Next thing to do is look at adding new stuff to the back. So we've not really got, so far we've not looked at how we're actually going to save this information. We've not looked at how we pull it from a file. We've not added the add new stuff, remove an existing element, and this one's going to pop up a menu to allow us to save and load new palettes. And here we're going to display the names. How do we actually want to edit the names? Maybe we don't want that to be a label. Maybe we actually want that to be a text box, and then we can just type in the names. Don't know, but I do feel like I'm going to probably have to stop this up soon. You should have a day-night shading mechanism, also direct sunlight shadow saving. Are there plans to include it eventually? I noticed the crop up. I was rendering rectangles arranged in a grid. Oh, sorry, that fix in 2.17. Yeah, that's all fixed. We get to bring in the fancy requests. I know, yeah. Yeah, we can do sort of really accurate sort of pixel plotting now in the. Have you not got a copy of the 2.17? There is one floating around on the Discord server. It's just not on the GitHub yet, but that one had the fixes for getting pixels in the right place. It was posted in the Pixel Game Engine chat. It wasn't on any hidden chats or anything. Okay. I think tonight I'm going to have to leave that there. But this has been actually quite an interesting foray into just the amount of work that's required to do something as simple as a little palette selection control like this. We've already got multiple source files. There's stuff going on. We've got events. We've had to handle double buffering of the input. And all we've had to handle how the windows scroll around properly. Yes, there's more to it than people might think when you just start looking at it on the surface. Well, yeah, you see, Magetsu, I think, even though I agree with you in an art package, that's a useful thing. This isn't necessarily an art package. So actually, these are going to be colours that are representing all sorts of different structures within the environment. So that, yes, sometimes they will be colours of polygons, but they could also have other meanings, such as this is a high friction area or this is a no-go area. In which case, that makes no sense to have them sort of shaded in a particular order. Looks like it still selects. Yeah, it does do. That's because I've got this sort of dead space here. That's fine because it still selects over here when it's accurate. I've slightly gone above the number of swatches available. I think we'll have to put in a hard check to make sure that the mouse is within the number of swatches. We can have a look at that. Let's go to where are we doing it? The hover. On mouse move. So we want to make sure that if it's not cell hover and h.x is less than, where do I keep my swatches? There. We'll pull you out. H.x is less than n swatch pitch. I think that's it. I think that'll do it. Go to the end. Yeah. So it doesn't change the hovered cell, but you can't anymore select one that's not there. And you could also, I'm not too buggy because you're not going to be routinely doing this with the palette, but the end result is accurate. I guess I could make it so if you're totally out of these bounds, nothing is selected. So if that's the case, is that going to do nasty things? Because it's now no longer refreshing either. Okay. So if I take you out there, so if it's not the same as what it was before, set it to that. If we're in h.x is less than new, do all of that. Else do that. And always refresh, just simply because h has changed. Is that better? Oh, there we go. So just to satisfy Danderstein's OCD there, now it will only give us the zoomed in palette cell selection when the cursor is genuinely over the palette cell. And we know that we're not rendering that last element too. That's okay. Well, I mean, I could keep going, but at some point I've got to go and do some dad stuff. I did all my Christmas shopping this morning at like 6 o'clock in the morning. I really recommend it. Thoroughly recommend it, actually. It was good stuff. Because the shop was completely empty, but it was totally stocked up. Right, I think that is it. Thank you all for watching. And I'll probably continue with some of this over the weekend. It's been nice to do some actual code again, although I've got a hurdy-gurdy that needs finishing, so hopefully we'll find some hurdy-gurdy time as well. If the weather's bad tomorrow morning, there'll be no archery this week, so that'll be some hurdy-gurdy building. So yes, thank you very much. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you later. Bye-bye.